Hey Mohammed,
Hey Ajay, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Great, yeah. Thanks Ajay for joining in. Let me quickly introduce myself. I got your profile as well with me. Hey, sorry, I can't turn on my camera. I don't know, there is something wrong with my machine.
Oh, okay.
That was not working the previous interview as well. To quickly introduce myself, as I called out, my name is Fayaz, and I'm currently taking care of an SRE team for Microsoft. And it's an internal technology which we call it as Geneva. So, but there, my team supports Cosmos Upload Service, building of that product, and also we have different paths to, log to analytics information over there, where we take care of that as well. Earlier to that, I used to work with Mindtree, with the same Microsoft ecosystem. So over there, I used to take care of Azure Lifesite, post to that being in Cortana Response Center. And while I was leaving Mindtree, I was taking care of a team called, a product called Power BI. My team used to take care of that product. So we used to manage Lifesite, site reliability engineering, and deployment part of it. That's a quick intro about myself. It would be great if you can quickly start introducing yourself.
Yeah, sure. So myself Ajay. So I have experience mostly on Azure and Azure DevOps. I've been working with my current client for 4 years. So I was started working from Windows Azure point of time. So I was later introduced to TFS and Azure DevOps in 2020. So previously I was mostly worked I was introduced to be working mostly on TFS 2010, 2015 and 2017 too. And later we migrated all our stuffs to Azure and Azure DevOps. So this is like a basic introduction. I have most of the experience that I worked on is in Azure and Azure DevOps, and I did work on some of the Azure components like Azure Cloud Services and all those infrastructure part of it. So my current day-to-day responsibilities include working on builds, releases, and taking into the production. So that's like a small introduction. And I previously worked as a build and release engineer also, where I gained a lot of experience on how exactly the process works with specifically for Azure and Azure DevOps and TFS previously it's not. So this is like the basic introduction of me. I can answer more based on the questions that you ask.
Great, thank you for that. Can you help me understand your day-to-day responsibilities, like how your day starts and how it ends?
Yeah, sure. So my current day-to-day responsibilities include creating builds, releases for our existing team. So my current team is we have a group of a couple of lead engineers, mid-level engineer and junior engineers, and we have a manager who takes care of all this stuff and an architect above him. And so this is my team size, and my day-to-day responsibilities includes working closely with developers and the QA team, making sure the builds and the releases are smooth to their environment. So whenever a requirement comes, so we use .NET. We currently use .NET Framework and also use .NET Core. Apart from that, we use C# for the mobile apps, desktop apps, and a few of our front-end applications, and .NET mostly for the back-end applications. So whenever a new requirement comes, I'll be taking care of creating builds and making sure those are getting deployed into the making sure creating releases for them and making them deployed into the dev test environments. Based on that, we'll be testing, doing user testing, and then taking it to the production. So these are like my overall day-to-day responsibilities. And I also work on provisioning a few of the infrastructure in Azure and cloud services and app services and etc. So this is my basic stuff that I'll be doing. Mostly involves Azure and Azure DevOps as my primary responsibility.
Got you. So what are the different tools you use in your day-to-day activities when it comes to starting a release, and completing the deployment? What are the different tools you actually use?
So coming to the tools, we use Azure Devops. That's one of the main tool. We have our builds and releases in it, and then and also we integrated our Azure DevOps with Teams, and also we use Logic Apps in Azure. So that there we add the connectors and do some kind of notifications whenever some kind of application goes down, or whenever some alert happens in the production. It was integrated using Logic Apps and App Insights, and it was directly notified using the Azure DevOps portal. So 80% of the stuff that I work on is in Azure DevOps, and that's one of the major tool that I'll be using. And Azure is the secondary stuff which we use for the deployment part. So these are like these Azure DevOps are most of the tools that I'll be working on mostly.
Okay, so how do you configure how do you deploy basically? Help me understand one deployment cycle of yours.
Sure. So we have cloud services. So the cloud services deployments. So for that, whatever the developers do, they write the code and help with the builds that I wrote. We will be having the packages ready, and making sure the class definition files and cloud service definition files and cloud service configuration files were ready for the deployment part. And once the packages are ready, and we write the pipelines for it, which are already there. So once
you write the pipelines, or are they already existing?
So based on a new requirement, if there is a new requirement, we go with the new pipelines. If not, we use the existing.
Have you configured pipelines in ADO?
Yes, we use YAML for pipeline. We used to use Classic before, but now we are using the Azure YAML. So coming to the release, so what we do is we have the class definition and the cloud service definition and cloud service configuration files. So once those are ready, we use release pipelines to deploy them into the cloud service staging slot. Once the deployment is done, we will be swapping using some PowerShell over there, so that it gets swapped with the production slot, and that's how the release process works right now.
Got you. So as you're already working in this Microsoft environment, right, have you ever been tried using Express V2 deployments?
Express V2 deployments, no files.
Via ADO. Okay. So you said you also configure pipelines by using YAML, right?
Mm-hmm.
Help me understand one scenario wherein you have configured a pipeline, and what is your contribution over there?
Yeah, so we have 3 templates which plays a major role for the deployment process. So the build template has all its build related tasks, and we have a deploy template which is having all its deploy related tasks, and combining them we have a build and deploy template where we have the stages and the parameters, variables and groups which were related in that specific templates. So we point the build template and the deploy template to the build and deploy template, and based on the parameters that were given in the YAML file, we have a Azure pipelines.yaml file that is configured on each and every repository respective to a backend service or front-end service. So once that is configured, we will be pointing those 3 templates which I told. Those resides in a separate repository. So once the YAML file is ready with specific existing configurations and parameters, then we will be using the builds and the release. So whenever we create, so the 3 templates are separate and the YAML file is separate. So the YAML file, all the files are written in the YAML format. So the YAML file that I'm talking about, which exists in each and every service, plays a major role over there. So we have.
Do you use the predefined templates in YAML which are available, or you make any changes changes to those templates?
No, the predefined templates remains the same, but the only thing changes, we have continuous integration. We enabled continuous integrations, and the triggers were already there. So whenever a new change is done, a build pipeline will already be automatic. So that's how the process works right now.
Okay. Yeah, probably when you're working on deployments, right? Definitely, we occur day-to-day challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So help me understand a time where you overcome a challenging situation at work, and what is the feedback you have received, and what are the steps you have taken in order to make sure that that does not happen again.
Yes. So there are a lot of scenarios to explain that. But in order to explain a good scenario, like where we have configured our branch policies. So all the branch policies were already there for specific repositories, and we have a couple of branches called master and develop branches, which plays a major role, and those will not be touched, and those are like develop branches logged. And we use a git like we initially used to not track our code changes. So when I initially came in, we don't have any git flow process that our team is following. So what I did is I came over here, and we followed a git flow process where we can make use of the tags that are available in Azure DevOps. So whenever a new change is done, it will be tagged. So it's based on type of change that is done. So if it's a minor change, it will be something like 1.0.1 or 1.0.2, 1.0.3. If it is like a major change, it's the tag name going to change to 2.0.0. So
how do you define those taggings?
So those taggings, so initially whenever we do a change for specific template, we create a feature branch out of existing develop branch or a master develop branch. So once the feature changes were done and everything is ready, we push it to the develop branch first, and we create a release branch out of develop, and then we tag it, and we push it to master, and then master to develop. So that's how the git flow process that we follow right now. And before pushing,
master is not the major. I mean, the main copy. You have a developer copy again.
Yes, we have a developer copy again.
So with the developer copy, you create a build and then you deploy.
Yes,
it's not with the master
feature. We create a feature out of develop, and then that's how the process is right now. And before pushing develop to master. Before pushing a master to develop, we create a tag over there. So whenever a new, like, we can keep track of the changes that were done. And
I'm hearing this for the first time. We are not creating a build by using master. Instead, we are using a develop, whatever the branch name.
Yeah, so that's how it was initially configured. So that's the process. So we used two branches which were not touched, like develop and master. So we keep track of master branch and develop. So both master and develop both are same.
Okay.
So mostly both are same. I think the names are interchanged, but mostly the names will mostly the branches will be up to date every time. So only the feature branch comes in, and those we delete the feature branches, and then we tag it. So that's the implementation done by me.
Okay. So there were multiple things being called out in your resume. I see database, you have RDBMS, SQL, NoSQL. Like, how comfortable are you on SQL? Or we use Kusto. So do you have Kusto knowledge?
I didn't understand that first.
Kusto. Or are you comfortable writing SQL queries?
SQL queries, no. I actually I used to work with the database teams to run some scripts which were needed during the time of production or during the time of dev and QA deployments. So like we have list of stores that need to be updated in our databases, so that whenever a customer goes and search for specific location, that one should be populated, right? So that's one of the scenario. So the database team just updates the existing databases with the respective environment and the new stores that they come in, and with the values, those things. So that's how I used to work with the database. And we used to use Azure SQL, and recently we got migrated to Cosmos, but most of our stuff is still in SQL, Azure SQL.
Okay. And monitoring tools, have you configured monitoring in Dynatrace?
In Dynatrace,
what are the things you monitor in Dynatrace?
So right now mostly we use Azure related stuff. So regarding monitoring, I already told we use application insights. For example, let's take a scenario where one of our menu item in the prod is not getting populated. So what we do is we configure, or let's consider a scenario where one of our cloud service is down. So our where there is, and one more scenario is like whenever the load becomes more. So we wrote we have application insights that are configured inside the teams itself. So once those scenarios happen, based on the type of conditions that we give for cloud, so it will get scaled. And if there is a notification, then if a menu item is not getting populated, then App Insights trigger will be it triggers a notification, and it gets directly integrated to the teams, and that's how we'll be getting that's how we'll be notified, and that's how we will be making the changes based on the notifications that we get using App Insights and Logic Apps.
And scripting programs, there are multiple. We have Python, PowerShell, Ruby, Node.js, Groovy. So on what scripting program are you comfortable at?
So right now I'm comfortable with PowerShell. I did write some scripts in our current project. So so for example, I already told you regarding the deployment part, right? So initially we used to have two slots, like production and staging. So when I came over to my current client, they didn't make use of the staging slot, which is available for cloud services. So I suggested something like we can do. There is a option to switch them. We can deploy them into staging first, and deploy them into the by doing a swap. We can do we can use the PowerShell to swap them. And we the swap slots kind of PowerShell script. That's one of the implementation that is done. And before they used to deploy directly to the production slot, and we used to do it. I do it in off hours, and we didn't get any issues. But the main issue is like when something goes wrong. So if something goes wrong, and if you want to roll back everything, then again deploying the things gonna consume time, right? So instead, just by swapping whatever the stuff that we have in our staging, it's like the old deployments, right? Just by swapping it, then everything gonna be good. So that's one of the implementation.
So is that only deployments, or you also manage build outs, rebuilding clusters?
Regarding
because I see implemented containerizing using Service Fabric in Azure for less downtime.
Yeah.
So have you configured any SF clusters?
Yeah, I did configure a few of the Service Fabric clusters, but it depends on the type of service, right? So for example, let's consider it will be having certain set of variables which need to have.
Help me understand what are the different resource groups you have to configure before you deploy a Service Fabric cluster.
Resource groups in the sense which are specific to a service, right?
In Azure Portal, what is a resource and what is a resource group in Azure Portal?
Yeah, so a resource group is a set of like set of infrastructure, like we have certain set of storage accounts, certain set of virtual machines, or certain set of different types of networks, or everything configured in one specific group, which was interlinked to specific subscription to, and that is like that's based on different types of environments that we use.
Right, so, you are correct. So I want to understand what are the different resource groups which are required to configure a service fabric cluster. Just the overview of it.
So in order to configure a service fabric cluster, we need to have some set of machines initially configured, because those are used for provisioning the nodes in service fabric cluster, right? So once the nodes were configured and everything, once we provision a service fabric cluster, so that's how and when we link it, like initially, if we want to configure anything, we need to have a storage account for sure, and we need to have some set of virtual machines, or we need to have some certain set of subscriptions, some set of APIs, which API management services, which plays a major role for service fabric cluster. Those things need to be configured, and we do need some kind of networking or virtual networks that need to be configured, or it depends on the type of application that we use. If that service fabric cluster is related to some major messaging service, we need to configure some service buses or anything, or it depends on the type of application. So in my scenario, what I configured is like I configured some storage accounts, some traffic manager, and some I did configure the storage accounts, virtual machines, and the traffic manager to point to that specific service fabric cluster, and the API management, and I linked it to the specific service fabric cluster.
Got you. How do you manage stress at work?
Managing stress at work, it depends. So sometimes we need to work more hours than we expect, right? So it depends, and based on the team and manager. So whatever we do daily, if some new challenge comes, we should not think it in a bad way. We should think it in a way that it improves our knowledge on specific implementations, right? So that's how I do the research and face the challenges at work. So coming to stress, specifically, I feel sometimes stressed, but it's based on the team, right, and based on the tasks that we get. So I'll try to manage everything, and if not, I'll try to work over the weekends and try to do some research on doing specifically how easily and how possibly the work should be completed, and that's how I manage my stress, like keeping myself updated first thing, because if we are up to date, you can understand the task, like what are all the dependencies associated with that, and what are all the positives, or what are all the negatives, the challenges that you faced while doing that task. So in order to have it stress-free, you just need to have some good knowledge and good understanding. So that's what I do. I just keep myself updating by doing some kind of preparing for some certifications and all this stuff. I'm currently working on my fundamentals, and also I'm trying to do AZ400 for my DevOps administrator. So these are the current stuff. So I just keep myself updated. So that's how I manage stress.
Why are you actually looking for a change?
So my current project is like about to end in a couple of weeks. So I'm a contractor. So that's the main reason I'm looking for new opportunities.
Got you. So at the moment you're there in Florida?
I'm in Florida, Largo.
Okay. So you find getting relocated if things go smoother?
Yes.
Yeah, great. I think I'm good. Do you have any questions for me before we wind up?
I have one question. Like the JD mentions mostly focusing on build, the build stuff, and the other thing is like code quality related stuff, right? So I want to understand like what's the part of the role that I will be what's the part of the job that is currently involved for this specific role on code quality
Yeah,
and
uh,
build.
I'll be I'll be happy to explain you. But the thing is, even I'm taking this project as a new project. Okay, so we recently got this, and today is the first day I got a chance to interact with that customer or our point of contact within Microsoft.
Okay.
Okay, so what I came to know is it is basically for what do we say, for a service called code. I made a note of it. Code coverage. So it is one of the service under Azure Core Quality Engineering. So there are different categories of teams under quality engineering, of which we will be supporting for one service called as code coverage. For this, we have to maintain CI/CD deployments, releases, investigate build pipelines, etc., etc. So things flow in. I cannot give you 100%. I cannot assure you that okay, this is the only scope of work which we are into, as it is a new team and we are forming it at the moment.
Okay.
But yeah, we will get a chance to experiment with new code coverage tools. We have to update our internal documentations with the new steps. All these things will be a part of our job.
Okay, it's not service based, right? It's like specific.
When you say service based, I would say no. It is like a task oriented work, which we will be more towards into. We might have a live site as well, but at the moment the requirement is for a build engineer. But tomorrow, if we want to migrate our skills into an on-call engineer as well to support for that product, for sure we have to contribute that until we get a new resource or new team being formed over there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the expectation I'm giving it to you.
Okay, Faiz. Yeah, that's all. Because while you mentioned it's not service based, I'm trying to understand how the process gonna work.
See, end of the day, if you're working, I want to be open enough. End of the day, if you're working with a vendor-based company apart from a product-based, right? So for sure, we have to agree for that service-based norms and everything.
Yeah.
It's an open fact, right?
Yeah, that's an open fact.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, any other questions?
No, Faiz, I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Hope you have a nice evening. I'll pass on the feedback to Vandana.
You too, Faiz. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.